Hello world, I'm Hayley Solich, I'm your host, and this is the Gold Digger Podcast, where we're digging the dirt and finding the gold in people's lives. Grab a cuppa, sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Before we start digging for gold, I just want to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from Wajak Noongar Budja here in sunny Perth and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land, both past and present. As you know, this podcast is about unearthing the wisdom from ordinary people's lives. How do people overcome challenges and what makes them want to make a difference? What inspires them to keep moving forward after personal life challenges? And how did they come to be the person that they are, doing the things that they're doing today? But before we get down and dirty with Monique, our next guest, and start digging around in her life, I want to share with you a quote. These are the words of Mary Kay. She said, "Aerodynamically, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, but the bumblebee doesn't know it, so it goes on flying anyway." And sometimes I think that life is like this. Certainly it has been so in my life, and I'm confident it will be so when you hear the story of our guest today. In my life, I've taken on challenges that should have been impossible, challenges like starting a magazine when you don't have a background in publishing nor 2 cents to rub together, but I did it anyway. Amazingly, it all seems to work out in the long run. But this quote also speaks to me about all those creative people around the world who are doing their craft, despite the greatest of odds from limited access to the resources that they need, on a limited time budget and with limited support. Yet they seem to manage to create the most amazing works of art, be it dance, film, theatre or creative artworks. And our guest today is one of those bumblebee women who, through her personal sacrifice, resourcefulness and sheer bloody-mindedness, has produced the most spectacular work of art in the movie Pieces. Script writer, lead actress and costume designer Monique Wilson has proven that she is a serious contender in the film space, with Pieces being her debut film, and what a triumph. Obviously, it takes a whole team to make a movie, and she would say she was just one of the pieces that made up this incredible film. But having had the opportunity to be a fly on the wall from the first interview with our family to support the background research through to the world premiere at CityFest Oz in Busselton, I've been able to witness just what a mammoth undertaking making this feature-length film was, and the absolute life-consuming beast it became in Monique's life. But I don't want to give it all away. I'll dig in the dirt of Monique's creative process and see what gold we can unearth from this very talented and creative woman. So without further ado, welcome, Monique.
Oh, hello and welcome to you too, Hayley. Lovely to be on your podcast.
It's so wonderful to have you. You're such a favourite person in my life, I tell you, Monique. And I'm going to ask you some questions that I ask all of my guests, and this is just a getting to know you type question. Can you tell me, choose an animal that best describes you, which animal you would choose and why?
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, if you ask my family, my nickname in my family is Sheep, as in black sheep, which I have somewhat owned and taken as a badge of honour, in the fact that I don't generally go about things in the way that most people do. But there's also, I think, I always have a great love of a peacock. I think because of its not in the traditional, obviously, sense of it, but in my real heart, and you see that very much in this film. I've always, as a kid, had a love of colour, and the joy that brings. And I think when you take me back to my child self, it's like something of beautiful jewel colours. Just gives me huge amounts of joy, which I'm pretty sure is the same for you, oh sparkly one.
Yeah, look, I am a firm lover of colour too,
yes.
and I have to say, Pieces, the movie, is so beautifully crafted. And I don't want to give too much away, but the artwork in it is just incredible, and it certainly does align with that peacock. That final scene in the movie really is that showy kind of part of showing who you are as that main character. So Lovely. I actually, yeah, peacocks. I think that really is you, because you have that tall, long limbs and gracefulness as well. Yeah, no, beautiful.
Well, I love the way that you see me in that perspective. It's lovely to see myself through your eyes, Hayley.
No, it's beautiful.
I don't feel like that.
It's important for you to also know the animal you're working with. And so today I'm going to identify myself with that bumblebee. You know, they're busy little creatures, all activity, flying around, cross-pollinating on everything and keeping the world alive. And so at the end of all that productivity, they produce the sweetest outcome, which is honey. And so, but beware, if you annoy them, they'll leave you with a gift to remember them by. Ouch. So, enough about me. Back to you.
Absolutely.
I know you've had some personal challenges in your own life, Monique.
Okay.
And especially in making this film. But before I get you to choose one of those, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
About myself. Who is me? Look, I mean, I just feel at this point in my life amazingly privileged that I've made it back to be able to do something creative with my life. I think I had a child very young. I was pregnant at 19, had a child at 20, and you know there were lots of different challenges around that and around the people in my life at the time. But the amazing part of that process is that, you know, as he's grown up into being a fabulous young man, to come back to do something creative at this age. So I'm turning 40 next year, and I think for a lot of women, whether or not it's motherhood, whether or not they've been through trauma, with that is whether caring for family with mental illness or they've gone through addiction in their family. You know, a lot of women that I meet are playing that role where they give up their identity to serve the people around them, and which I think is a phenomenal act of love. But I think that's not the end of the female story. You know, and again, I think that part of their life, whether or not it's as a mother or as a wife, or is incredibly important. But then I think it's also important to tell stories of women that come the full circle back to the thing that they always wanted to do. And I think we're at a really exciting time creatively where the industry has realised that women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s want to see stories on the screen that represent them and that tell their stories. And for many, many years, obviously, creatively, it was this idea that people only wanted to see, I don't know, stories of people in their teenage years and their 20s. And there was no place in the entertainment industry for women of a certain age. So I feel very lucky in that sense that the industry is moving, and that I've had an opportunity to sort of come back to it at nearly 40 and really begin my career from scratch.
It's fantastic, Monique, and I just love that, you know, as women we can reinvent ourselves or reconnect ourselves to who we were previously. And I know that you have encouraged me in the same way, and it just reminded me of my sister sending me tap shoes. I'm 56 and I was a dancer in my youth, as you know, Monique, and so getting those tap shoes was just really just to reconnect me to my creativity, and I put them on and I loved it, but I just could not do what I used to be able to do for very long at this age and with this level of fitness. So I really admire the work. And having been on the journey with you, I admire the work you put into being able to move and to do the choreography, and to do even doing the film work is extremely taxing on your body.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was very lucky to work with a beautiful choreographer who's in the film, Ashanti, who runs the dance workshop in North Perth, and they specialise in really getting, in people like you and me, for people that danced once upon a time but haven't danced for a long time. And really, I mean, I was shocked. It was heartbreaking somewhat when I went back to dance, to realise, obviously, as the years go on, how much harder it is to pick it up. But at the same time, I think, like with everything, with patience, if you're a little bit gentle to yourself, which I know that a lot of women are not, and I'm not, it does come back. Things do come back. It's like riding a bike, but it just doesn't happen straight away. So that's the process that I understand with getting older, and obviously with being much older than I am. In time that I've spent with people that are in their 70s and 80s, it's just about having grace and gentleness on yourself, and it's actually amazing what people can do. So yeah, it was very painful at first to try and get my body to move, but we got there eventually, which is always the great reward.
Yeah, definitely. And look, if you didn't get an award for anything, you should get an award for completing the film, because it was torturous at times, I know, for you. And look, I wanted to sort of dig into your creative process a little bit. How did you come up with some of the ideas that are in the film? So, for example, I don't want to give too much of the film away, but I do want to encourage people to go and see the film. It's an amazing film. But things like the artwork and the connection of story into the artwork, and into the dance throughout the film, how did you sort of arrive at some of those ideas? Because they're very special.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think it comes when I'm writing something, I really do it a lot like a puzzle piece, which is why, I mean, that's my process in general, and it's obviously reflected in this title. But I'm trying to honour as many people that are involved as possible. So if there is stories that I have been told, for instance, things like something that your family has shared with me that is particularly poignant, and then there's an actor with a particular skill, then all of those things sort of go into trying to weave this tapestry to make it a community piece that has something that's important to everybody and it really is, for me, it's more like this movie is more like a poem. It's about images and it's about feelings, because again, when you're dealing with the subject matter, which is obviously people living with mental illness and the amazing job that their family members do, looking after them and living by them and also being blessed by them, that's a very intricate, nuanced subject. So to me, words often fall short in those situations, and you need art, you need dance, you need music, you need things that actually give someone an emotional experience rather than telling people how to feel with words. And that's really where this concept came from. It's about trying to give people to sit back and just have an experience rather than get stuck on individual bits and pieces.
Yeah, it definitely is an experience. I remember reading just even the quote from, I think it was Jeff from ABC, one of the reporters, said that this movie changed my life. And, here we were many hours later still unpacking the layers of having viewed this film. And I so agree with that. And I do love how you have remained so dedicated, I think, to the integrity of the story and the integrity of the experiences of people living with a mental health challenge. You've really honoured the relationships between, family members and the person that's struggling with the issue, and you've honoured those in such a loving way. I describe the film as normalising mental health experiences, and really that's what it is. It's about, remembering that this is a person. It's not a diagnosis. And so kudos to you for that, my friend. Good job. I got to the end of the film and went, yes, well done. You know, it ticked all my boxes. So thank you so much for the integrity of the film. I know this was your first role as a lead actress and getting in front of the camera. What was your biggest challenge in that process?
Twofold for me, really. I mean, I guess because I had written it and was doing lots of other different roles on set. They're two very different headspaces. So when you're writing something, or even when you're doing production design, it's very cerebral. It's very in your head. But acting is a real body experience. It's like playing sport. You've got to be in the moment. You've got to be reacting. And so that was the real challenge of going in and out of those two roles and making sure that I didn't, carry the stuff in my head about the production when I was actually playing the part. That was definitely a challenge. And I would say that I would never do it again, but that would be a lie. I'm sure that I will do it again.
Well, you wouldn't be a bumblebee woman if you didn't do it again.
I very much feel like these creative projects, and I know that you would be somebody that would relate to that, is that they're always, they're going to kill you in some way, shape or form. And they always do that in a way that you can never possibly imagine. But I feel like it's a bit like giving birth. You know, it's that you go through this horrendous pregnancy process for people that didn't have a good pregnancy. I'm one of those kind of women. And then, the birth is very painful, but then the joy of the result of it is so overwhelming. You forget all the pain and you pony up to do it again. And that's...
Yes, I can relate to that, having had 5 pregnancies for living children. You do. The pain is worth it for the end result. But then, they get to this age of early adulthood and the pain continues.
It's a never ending job. And this film in that regard as well is very much, as you know, an ode to motherhood as well.
Yes. Yes, it definitely is, and I have to say, there were some scenes that were almost out. I relived my life watching the film at times, it was. I was able to see that and have those experiences, but not be devastated by them. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you can see the trauma that you've been through and it not kill you on the inside still. It's a sign that, you've had a healing process. And I think the ability for our family to share some stories with you and you got to choose what you wanted to use or didn't use, but just that opportunity to sit with someone who really cared and wanted to know the story and wanted to honour the story, I think that was a very healing process for us as a family as well. So thank you for that opportunity.
That's awesome.
I think that we'll take... Yeah, no, it was wonderful. We're just going to take a pause for a short break. And in the break, you're going to hear a piece of music that was actually inspired by the movie Pieces and by Monique in particular, that was written by my daughter and myself, called Missing Pieces. And it's really, the song is the story of the two main characters, which is a mother and daughter. So have a listen and we'll be back in a moment.
Voices going round in my head, I don't believe them, don't believe what they said. The light is calling, it's calling, someone help me. consumes me. It consumes me. I just can't find who I need to be. Just can't get moving. We're missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving. We're missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving. We're missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving. We're missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and
You're listening to the Gold Digger podcast, and I'm Hayley Solich, speaking with actress and screenwriter Monique Wilson. In thinking about your creative process, and we're talking about the movie pieces, what inspired you when you were writing pieces, and what did you hope to achieve through this movie?
What inspired me? I mean, I think I can, in what I wanted to achieve in writing pieces is really something that broke down the barriers of the discussion about mental illness. So I think, from my perspective and what I've seen in my life is that absolutely it can happen to anybody, and that it's often, the traumas that happen to people that can kick off something that goes on for them are things that we need to be aware of, that could happen to anybody in any situation, any socioeconomic background, any degree, education, anything. And I really think it's important to give people permission to talk about those things that have happened to them, because, in the research that I've done in my own personal life, I know that it happens in every family, and that whether or not you yourself have had a diagnosis of mental illness or not, that I think most people have walked that fine line of mental health and whether or not they've gone over into ill health or good health, that they understand that, there's a very thin line. And it was really important for me that people, I think, again, once you shine a light on something and you bring light onto it, it sort of has a much greater chance to bring healing, I think. So that's the inspiration. And again, as I said previously, the way that I piece together something creatively is from multitudes of different directions, from my own stories, from the stories that I've listened to, from the desires of other people around me to see something come to pass. But I think also, particularly with this, I was really keen to listen to how people living with mental illness had felt that they'd been misrepresented in film previously, and to sort of try, if I could, to avoid a lot of those tropes that people in Hollywood maybe had gone down.
Yeah, fantastic. And you really did do that well. It is very easy to just focus on the drama. but I feel you got a really good balance of story and drama in the show. So well done on that as well.
I'm very glad that you feel that way. And again, obviously for people listening, Hayley was one of the people that I was making sure that I ran the script past when we were coming up with this idea to do a film there was, the startup funding for it was given from Helping Minds, and Hayley was appointed to the film to really be that advisor for me as the scriptwriter, to run the material past. And she was really invaluable, not as in just her personal experience, but also for me to show her the scripts and say, where do you feel like I haven't paid enough attention? And so obviously for me personally, to have her tick of approval is very, very important for me. So that's a very special thing.
Yeah, and it was just wonderful to be able to have that influence and to be able to sort of provide feedback along the journey, because I got to see the film evolve, and then it meant something even more special to me as being part of that, and I really appreciated your commitment to that engagement. I think that's really, really valuable. What would you do differently, Monique? And how has this shaped you, as a person? How's this experience shaped you? And what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Again, as I said, it's always hard when you say that, because, I'm sure that I will take on a project that is bigger and make bigger mistakes than I did with this one. I think what I would do differently is that maybe, again, that's that thing that we're talking about that all women do, is that I'm always doing this thing where I'm trying to make sure that everybody else is sorted before I work on my own piece of the puzzle. And I think if I could go back in time, I would just try and put aside more time to really enjoy the process of performing in it and really work on that, just so that I could really feel like I was bringing the best of myself to the table, which, as I said, I do that all the time. And as I said, I've talked to a lot of women that are the same. It's like when it's always when I do all of these things, I'll get back to me, but that never happens. So I would prioritize making sure that my part of the puzzle was looked after a little bit better, so that I didn't end up, because again, in the result of this, which is very common for me, I ended up quite sick at the end of it. And that's unfortunately my self-management, which I'm still working on now, which I think, as I said, is something that a lot of women that I know struggle with. That are just like, I'll just keep pushing my body until it breaks, and then it breaks, and then it takes longer to recover. That's right. As you get older.
It is about timing and being kind to yourself along the journey, I think. And as somebody who's been there, done that many times over, you do learn with age. I've got a few years up on you, Monique, and you do actually learn with age to actually start to pace yourself a bit better. But reflecting on myself at 40, I was in the midst of it and going full on. So I completely relate to that. Has anything changed for you through this experience?
Changed for me in what regard?
In terms of, when you go through something and it's challenging, sometimes there's little signposts while you're in the midst of it, and we've just talked about one, which is maybe take a bit more care with your own self and give yourself more priority. But was there anything else that changed in you? Did it strengthen your voice? Did it provide new opportunities? Anything like that came out of this process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is just at the very beginning of hopefully starting to happen, because at the moment, obviously, without, it's a very bizarre experience doing a film. Theatre, you do a short rehearsal process and then you give it to the world and then you leave it all out there. Whereas with film, it's literally like being pregnant for 2 years. So it's there's an element of I still don't feel like I've got to give this away to the world, and I know that there'll be a tremendous sense of relief when that happens. But in terms of the way that it's changed me, I think, again, something that I know a lot of creatives struggle with and I struggle with is to value my time, and I know that that's something that I really want to take out of this process, is to place a better value on what I offer in terms of time and commitment to something. And that I think there's also that thing with creative pursuits, is that people believe it to be a hobby. I mean, that's in the wider community, not so much as work, and that you take that on board and don't look at it as work. And it is work, and it's hard work. So I'm hoping that through this process I will start to place a better value on what I contribute, so that I don't end up with burnout, which is, as I said, very common for women and
definitely
for
when you want to
people.
do something with excellence, it's easy to push yourself beyond what you should do. So any silver linings from the experience? Those. Do you want to share a couple with us?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I think I'll start with the fact that doing this process at this age really confirms to me that I wasn't ready to do this at 17, which is a really phenomenal thing, I think, in many ways, is that I feel like this is the right time for me. There's a lot of people that tell you that you have to do things at certain times, and there are particular periods in my life when obviously people spotted that I could do something, but it wasn't the right time for me. And it was really being on this set and all the challenges that it threw. It really made me feel like, yes, this is the right time for me to do this. This is difficult, but if I was any other age, I wouldn't be up for it like I am now. And that was really exciting, I think, and the real silver lining for that, because it confirmed to me that I shouldn't have been anywhere else for the last 20 years other than living life. And that's the same from a storyteller's perspective. You don't have any stories to tell unless you've actually lived some stories. And I feel like at this point in my life, I am full of stories to tell. But that's great. It's fabulous to think that may have value to people. It's amazing to think that the life that I've lived, that's overwhelming and humbling to think that there are parts of my life that could bless other people, really is the silver lining. Like even this story that we're talking about, this idea of women coming back to creative things, I didn't really think of it. You don't think of it as anything other than your own story until I think one of my friends in radio was telling me, her friend at the station said, please tell me this is a story of a woman, in her late 30s or early 40s. And she was like, yes, it is. And she was like, oh, that's amazing, because the need for women of all ages to hear that it's never too late to do what you love. And to think that I could possibly be encouraging to you or to anyone to do that is a huge blessing. And that's the silver lining for me. Like to feel like there's going to be an amazing, because how much wisdom, obviously, as you know, is in women of their 50s and 60s and 70s, and this notion in Western society that we've lost the value of women of those ages, which was not the way in tribal cultures. And even to a certain degree, I think even in European countries, they place a lot higher value on women of wisdom than we do in Western society. And so I feel like it's a really exciting time to celebrate women of all ages And if I'm even though I'm on the younger end of that, if that is part of that process, I'm touched to be a part of it.
Thank you for all of the joy that you brought into our life working on this film. And also I want to thank you from the whole of the mental health community in Western Australia and the world, really, for investing so much of yourself in this movie and your commitment to keeping it real. That's really helped to normalise how people will see mental health challenges in the future. And I hope it will also make it easier for people to get earlier intervention and to get greater acceptance from within the community. You're an absolute legend, Monique.
You have been an invaluable support and resource and champion, and again in something that has takes so much of yourself. It's so amazing to have people in your corner and also people in the industry that actually support what you're doing. So I thank you so much for all those wonderful, encouraging and very gracious words. It's lovely to think, again, as I said, to me, the fact that you actually appreciate the project is job done. Job done.
Job done. Absolutely. So that's the end of our interview with Monique, but it's not the end of the story for Monique. No doubt we're going to see Monique many times over in film, writing film, costume design, whatever it is that she can get herself engaged in the film industry in the future. But also we're going to be seeing more of Pieces. Pieces has its VIP launch in Perth on the 6th of October at Luna Cinemas, and I'm very excited to be invited to that particular viewing. Plus there'll be some viewings at Backlot Theatre over that weekend, and then it will be going on a bit of a tour around the country. You can find out more about that online. Monique, do you know the address, web address for people to find out about where it's being viewed?
Yeah, so the website will be, there's a website at thirdstorypictures.com, but if people want to look up the film on Instagram, it's at Pieces Film is the hashtag, and that has all the information about where it's on regionally and all of those showings at the Backlot Theatre in Perth. But we hope, again, this is the very beginning, as Hayley said, there's showings this week for the launch of Mental Health Week in WA, but we hope that it has a lifespan beyond that. But yeah, if you can get out and support it this week, that means its possibility of having a bigger lifespan will be increased.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Monique. That's us done for the Gold Digger podcast today. You're listening to Hayley Solich, and we were interviewing Monique Wilson. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.